Welcome to our Wednesday creativity workshop with Adobe Education. Today is Wednesday, October 23rd, and today I'm very excited to be joined by Adobe Education leader Kevin Brandon, who's going to be sharing shape tools in Adobe Photoshop and XD for fast layouts. Kevin is joining us from Humber College, and we're very thrilled to have you. So Kevin, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to start sharing my screen. There we go. All right. So one of the things that when we were asked to talk about different topics that we were interested in, some of the things that really fascinated me were just shapes as I started to show my graphic design students how to create websites. And one of the things that fascinated me again is just seeing how the layouts were done and trying to get the students to create layouts quickly and how to see layouts as shapes. I know, laughing at one of my sons, he was telling me he was learning Illustrator at school, and I thought, oh, that's amazing. I can help you with that. What are you learning in Illustrator? And he said, we learned how to draw a circle. But that seems kind of a little bit short, so let me see if I can do something more with my students as well. So what I want to talk about today is shapes, and shapes you can use in Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop, XD, After Effects, all the Adobe programs, but how do we use it more effectively and efficiently in trying to get students to move along quickly in their design so they can get what they got in their head out onto the screen. So if you have any questions, Claire has promised to let me know if there's any comments in the chat or questions in the chat. And if you're interested on Adobe edX, I'm uploading some content there for teaching resources, the assets, and it looks like it's still uploading. So I may create a Google link as well to this as it goes along, but let me walk through this and see if this is going to be of any help to you. Right. Now, here I am, Kevin Brandon, Humber College, Toronto, Canada. There's my information if you're looking to contact me or you want to follow up or if you have other questions. There's my email address, kevin.brandon@humber.ca, as well as my Twitter account and my Adobe edX membership ID. So I'm uploading the content that we're going to have today, posting it back on there so you can find that. When you think about shapes, again, shapes are elements of design. There's always the question of what's a principle of design, what's an element of design. When I was doing some research on that, again, there's principles of design, there's 6, 7, 12, 8, 5. The elements of design is where shape kind of lies. So there's color, there's line, shape, space, texture, value. And so I'm just focusing on just the one element today called shape. I think is all good academics have to do. They have to go to the dictionary and define it. So the shape is the external form or appearance of characteristic of someone or something, the outline of an area or figure. So we're definitely going to focus on the outline of an area or a figure today using shapes. Categories of shapes. So there are 3 different kinds of categories of shapes. You may know these already, but just to go over them, I've got the geometric shapes, modified geometric shapes, and then organic shapes. And so I'm going to look at those 3 main kind of ideas as we go through the tutorial this morning, this afternoon, wherever you're from. Geometric shapes. So in a lot of the Adobe apps, you're going to have your square, circle, triangle, and those are the basic ones that you're going to find in most of the Adobe apps, wherever you go. I can go and modify these shapes. I can take the square and make it a rectangle. I can take the circle and make it an oval, and the triangle, I can use the star or the polygon and create a triangle out of that. I can also change these shapes as well. So I've got the square, circle, triangle. I can create a stop sign using the polygon. I can also create that star shape. And these are all the geometric shapes that are just available to you in all the applications. I can go and modify those shapes. So a square with rounded corners, I can add a slant to it. I can make the ellipse look like an egg. I can round the corners on a polygon or a triangle. Same thing for the star. So I can just modify these shapes based off of the regular shape tools. So if I'm inside Adobe Illustrator, if I click on the rectangle tool, oh yeah.
We have a quick question from Teresa. She's just curious how you created this slide presentation and if you used Adobe XD.
I was trying to use Adobe XD for this one, but basically I have Adobe InDesign. So I've got a template. I can show you the template if you're interested. Is that of interest, Clara?
I think we can share it after the presentation. for sure.
Fair enough. So everything's
Sounds
done
good.
for me as screen captures dropped into an InDesign template and then saved out as a PDF file. Cool. I can do a session on that if you want to, how I create my slide decks. I've worked on that for about 10 years now, so having fun. Inside Illustrator, if you click on the rectangle tool, there's all your tools. I'm still curious who uses the rounded rectangle tool. I just don't think that tool is really necessary anymore. But you've got the rectangle tool, the ellipse, the polygon, the star tool, and why is the flare tool there? So those are my own biases of the rounded rectangle tool I don't think is needed, and the flare tool, I rarely use that. But those are the basic geometric shapes there. Inside Illustrator, whenever I draw a shape, I've got the Properties panel on the right-hand side, and the Properties panel just allows me to go down and click on the transform, so I can set the X and Y positioning, I can set the width and the height, make sure that I've got exactly what I want, and also check and see if it actually is a circle or whether it's an ellipse. The rotation tool really doesn't work well on a circle because I don't know if it's rotated or not. I've also got the fill, the stroke, and the opacity that I can set on any of the shapes here, and you guys probably know that already. The other tools that I love inside Illustrator, if you haven't played with the Shaper tool, let me quickly show you what that looks like. I'm going to switch over to Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to create a new document. When I create a new document, I tend for my demonstration purposes in class to do 11 by 8.5, just because it fills the screen better than 8.5 by 11. So here's my document here. Again, there's your basic square, rectangle tools. What I love is the Shaper tool here. So if I click on the Shaper tool, if you haven't played with this before, this is fantastic, especially for students who may not have the control of the pen tool. So if I try and draw a circle, you guys may question my drawing skills now, which I think is appropriate. But if I let go, it draws a perfect circle for me. If I draw somewhat a square shape, automatically does a square, triangle. Students often go, oh, cool, does it do the star as well? If I try and do a star shape, my apologies to Patrick Starfish, it doesn't do anything. But the basic shapes, it'll allow me to create. Are you guys all using the Shaper tool? Have you used that before? Or is this a new tool?
Yeah, seeing people post in the chat. So if you have used it before, Jason says he will now.
Fantastic. I love that tool when it's released because it has so much more freedom than having to go and choose the tools specifically. And I can just quickly draw whatever I'd like.
Mm-hmm. And
All
Teresa
right,
says she teaches it, but she hasn't used it herself, and Mauricio hasn't before. So some new learnings today.
Okay, great, fantastic. So definitely take that away with you because I find those are so simple to use and the students really pick up on it quickly. The Shape Builder tool is kind of a really cool tool. If you haven't used that one, I'll just run through it quickly. So one example that I use in class is, let's take the rectangle tool, and I'm going to create a cloud icon really quick. So I'll take a rectangle, and I'm going to drag in the corners. Pressing L on my keyboard, I'm switching to the ellipse tool. So I can create a really large circle, position that here, and we'll say that today is going to be a cloudy day. So I've got these ellipse and the rectangle there. I can select all of the objects together, and with the Shape Builder tool, I can click on that, and I just simply drag up through all these different elements here and let go, and it creates one shape for me. Cool. Any questions on the Shape Builder tool and the Shaper tool? I'm going to assume no and carry on.
Yeah, I'm seeing just a lot of great comments. Jason says, that's another one I didn't know about. Thank you. And Mauricio says, very cool. So I think everyone's excited to try it.
Okay, great. Great, because the Shape Builder tool allows you to create more organic kind of shapes if you'd like, whereas the Shaper tool, again, creates your basic shapes. More freedom for the students. Take a look at the shapes in Photoshop. Again, you got the basic shapes. You got your rectangle tool, your rounded rectangle tool, your ellipse, your polygon line, and what looks like a gingerbread man, but it's actually a custom shape tool. And again, in Photoshop, I can go to my properties panel, and the properties panel allows me to control the X and Y position, the width and the height, as well as the fill. And it gives me a shape layer. In InDesign, I can do the exact same thing. Rectangle, ellipse, and polygon frame tools. So these are all the frame tools that I like to use. I like to use these shape tools because I can either fill them with color, or I can fill them with images, and I can have a lot of fun there. The star tool you'll see is missing from InDesign here. It's actually found in the polygon frame tool. So if I go into that, I can actually find where the star is. Let me know if you're interested in me showing that. If you note in the chat, Clara will let me know.
I'm looking in here. I don't see any comments so far.
All right. Great, then I'll move on. If somebody does comment, then I can always go back. No worries at all.
Sounds good.
So I just created a triangle shape in InDesign. Again, the properties panel, love the properties panel because as a graphic design, we're not really about guessing. So I can see that when I've done a width and height here, 4.595, it's me just drawing something out, and it's not as accurate as I would love it to be. So that's where the properties come out, and I can actually punch in the values that we need there, along again with the fill and the stroke, corners, and the opacity. So again, just showing the shapes are in every single app that we have. In Adobe XD, we have the basic shapes again. You've got, when you launch Adobe XD, you've got the square, you've got the circle, the triangle. Are you guys getting bored of that now? Am I convincing you that these tools are everywhere and that we can use them?
I'm getting
again
very cool comments, so keep going.
Great. So then the properties panel again on the right-hand side. So again, I love that Adobe has some consistency here. I think it really helps in terms of us being able to teach the application, as well as the students being able to follow along and not get lost. So along the right-hand side, again, you've got the properties panel where you've got the width, the height, the X and Y position, the rotation, as well as the appearance, fill, and border. So there's a lot of consistency. With that kind of idea, we can say, okay, there's the shapes. Now, how do we actually make a website layout from these shapes? So I went and found a number of websites. So if you've been to PSD Freebies, a website, or there's all kinds of Burger Graphic, there's all kinds of template websites out there that students can download, and they can take a look at websites that have already been designed by designers. So all I've done here in this example is I've just noted the rectangle tool and the ellipse tool. So you can see where a rectangle tool may have been used and where an ellipse tool may have been used. So I've just highlighted those shapes in this design in a magenta keyline. So hopefully as the students start to take a look at this, they start, instead of going, a website, to start to break it down into shapes, layout elements, and we can go really quickly on that one. Here's the website that we're going to be creating today. Ozeo is just a dummy name that I found years ago and wanted to use it in different projects. So this Ozeo Surf Shop, hopefully you can start to see that there's rectangles involved, there's ellipses involved, and also we've manipulated the geographic shapes so they become modified geographic shapes. Give a little bit of an angle and action to things. Polygon tool is the unique one used in this layout, and it's just down inside of these photos. So instead of having a square photo of somebody or an ellipse photo, we can actually have different shapes. And I think the polygon actually works really well and provides a unique kind of layout design for a different product. So if I go specifically into Photoshop website layouts, here's what the colored layout looks like from the Ozeo Surf Shop. And if I break it down, zooming in a little bit, I can see a rectangle at the top for the logo and the navigation, a modified rectangle for the hero image of the main surfer, and 3 rectangles for the specific surf team, along with ellipse showing the photos of the surf team, and rectangles with rounded corners for the buttons. Below that, I've got also a modified geometric rectangle down here to give a little bit of an angle, give a little bit of action to what's going on as opposed to just simple rectangles that I see on a lot of websites. The bottom part of this website, following the same process, I have a large rectangle here for the surf lessons, as well as another rectangle that's placed on top. Rounded rectangles for the border, for the buttons around the borders here, and I can see another square down here, and throwing in a rectangle with rounded corners. So there's border radiuses to define the buttons, and everything else is kind of geometric. Rectangle, square, square, square for the gallery below for their Instagram shots. So this is what I want to work on today and start to build up. Clara, I'm just going to switch over and see if it's actually uploaded my assets yet.
Yeah, sure.
I don't see it's uploaded there. Can I create a quick Google Drive, upload content there quickly?
Sure, yeah, I think that sounds great. And we can always share it out after the fact as well.
Okay. I guess another question, are people interested in following along in what I'm doing right now, or do they just want to watch what I'm doing?
I will let folks on the chat chime in if you want to follow along or watch the presentation now and then kind of go from there and try it out after.
Is it like those Costco samples?
Prefer to watch for the time being, and then
great.
After watching, trying it out on their own.
Fantastic. Perfect. Now I've got the direction. Kind of like those Costco samples where I'm interested in seeing what it is first, trying a little bit, and then I'll do it myself. I'll buy my own if I like it.
Yep. People are chiming in.
All right,
perfect. Great. Just keep going.
Great. So then I'm going to leave these as instructions. So basically what we're doing is going to create a document that's 1,366 pixels wide by 3,600 pixels tall. Color mode is RGB. For web resolution is 72. And we're going to place the grayscale template image that we have in the zip file that I'm going to open up and show you guys. And we're going to use the shape tools to draw the website layout and modify it. So if I go back in, I'm going to I'll walk through the slide deck really quick, and then I'll open up Photoshop and show you exactly what I'm doing. So creating a new document, just adding all the content here that we talked about, the dimensions, going inside this layer. Here's my layer background here, so it's locked, so I don't move it. And one of the things I love about Photoshop is their new guide layout. So as we're starting to lay content out and place elements around, Photoshop has this view, new guide layout. And again, I can add columns and rows. So I'm going to create my own custom one. I'm going to do 24 columns. I'm going to have 0 for the width. It's just going to go to the entire height of this document. The gutter, I'm going to leave 0 for the gutter. And margin, I'm going to set 24 pixels from the top. And from the left and right, I'm going to set 12 because 12 is half of 24. Just give me a little bit of padding around the edges so no content touches that. As well as at the bottom, give me another 24 pixels to give me a little bit of room at the bottom. So just as I'm laying out a document, I love this guide layout from Photoshop. So I'm going to hide that document now, and I'm going to go into Photoshop and just do exactly what I was going to say. So creating a new document, web, and artboard 72 RGB, and I'm going to call this OZO Surf Shop and create. I've got this artboard in here now, and again, just like talked about, I'm going to go to the new guide layout, and it remembers what I'd done before. So I've got kind of the cheaty way here, but again, 24 columns, 24 margin from the top, 12 from the left and right, and 24 from the bottom. And I've got the layout in here that I'm looking for. Click back on the artboard to see that again. And I'm going to go inside my assets folder now. And inside here, I've got images. And what I want to do is actually take a look at the templates folder, because this is going to have the grayscale one. One of the things I find about using the grayscale image, even though I have a color image below, is if I give the students the grayscale image, it just removes one element of design so they can focus on the layout rather than getting caught up in the colors to begin with. So I'm going to take this gray image here and simply going to open that up in Photoshop, select it, copy it, paste it, and there it is. And what I probably will do is I'm going to hide those guides, and I'm going to change the opacity here and try and make it about 50% just so it's a little bit lighter. I'm going to lock that layer so that now it doesn't move. If I increase the size here and scroll up to the top, I always tend to work from the top to the bottom. And so I want to start with this hero image because I'm going to deal with shapes today. And I'm going to grab the shape tool from Photoshop, and I want to make sure I'm grabbing the rectangle tool. And I'm just going to simply click and drag over this area. So there's my rectangle for the hero image. And again, in my properties panel, I'm going to make sure that it's exact. So the width should be 1366, 1366, and 610 pixels is great. 0 for the X, so I know it's right on the left-hand side. And 89, I'm not sure if that bugs anybody else, but I'm going to just set it to 90 because it's an even number. There's my rectangle. Super easy part of the layout, but I want to change the shape from your regular rectangle shape to be a modified geometric shape. And I can easily do that by taking my direct select tool. And when I choose the direct select tool, I can come down and click on the shape just on the bottom left-hand anchor point, and I can simply take that anchor point and drag it down and align it with the template. When I do that though, Photoshop is going to yell at me, and Photoshop is going to say this operation will turn a live shape into a regular path. So I'm aware that this is going to remove it from the live shape and any benefits I have of that in Photoshop, but I do want it just to be this modified shape. So I'm going to say yes to that. And now you can see I've got the shape here. And this shape here, it's lovely. I can change the color if I'd like. But what I really want to do is, inspired by a student before, yes, it's a good idea to save this file. Inspired by one of my students before who talked about clipping masks, layer masks and clipping, I want to basically go in here and use this shape now as a clipping mask. So I'm going to go back into my templated files here, the assets that I've got, and I'm going to find my Hero BK. Don't be confused, it's not Burger King, it's the surfing one. So I'm going to drag that image into Photoshop as well. And inside Photoshop, I'm simply going to Command A, copy this image, paste it into my new document, place it where I'd like it to be, and now I'm going to use this shape as my clipping mask. So I'm going to hold the Alt or the Option key, and as I move my mouse in the Layers panel between these two layers, Rectangle 1 and Layer 2, which I'll rename in a minute, I get this new icon with an arrow and a square, and it's pointing to the layer below, and this just says make a clipping mask here. So I can use that shape to create a clipping mask, and there's my modified geometric shape with the image inside of that. And I would tend to call this rectangle, this is the hero image, so maybe hero mask. And I can call this the hero image as well. And even though the hero image is inside here, clipped to that shape, I can use Command Control T for free transform. And if I want to scale this or position this a little bit better, you still have the complete access to move the image around inside that clipping mask to get it to wherever you would like it to be. Does that make sense? All right. If that's all good, then what I'm going to do is select both of these layers. I'm going to group them together, and I'm going to call them Hero, so I know where that's at. I can also click on the eye, and I'm just going to hide that layer group now, and try and work quickly using the shapes to create these objects down here. So the next one I'm going to create is Stephen Wise, and simply click and drag a rectangle. And there's the first shape. Hide that rectangle, and I'm going to create another rectangle, and this rectangle, instead of doing the entire rectangle for that surfer, I'm just going to grab a rectangle and grab it for the background image. I'm going to hide that layer as well, and I'm going to go to the ellipse tool, and I'm going to create an ellipse for the headshot for the surfer. Right. And I'm going to start naming these things, so headshot mask, image mask, and surfer bio rectangle. So I've got those shapes all there. And again, I'm going to change some of these shapes, just the color of them. So in Photoshop, selecting that shape layer, clicking on the color, and I can make it whatever color I'd like. I tend to do it just in the in grays so I can see the difference. Yeah. There we go. So I can see the difference just between where all these shapes are. And again, I can start to use these as exactly what I want them for. So I'm going to go and find the face for Stephen. And back inside my files here, I've got Stephen, the background image, and Stephen, the headshot. So I'm going to open up both of these inside Photoshop. And I'm going to grab Stephen's photo first, copy, close that file, paste it above the headshot mask, and I'm going to position this inside here. I'm not exactly sure of the scaling yet, but it doesn't really matter because I'm going to take these two layers again, and I'm going to call this simply the headshot, and clip this, so holding the Option or Alt key in between the two shapes. I can scale this down again to be whatever I'd like it to be, so that kind of fits in that circle. I'm going to click on the image mask now, bring that layer to life. Go back to the Stephen Wise background tab, select all, copy that, close that image, paste it over top. This is a huge image. All right, fine, I'm going to have to scale it a little bit more than normal. But again, just because I have that image there and it's above the image mask, I can simply clip that. Command or Control T, and I'm just going to scale that background image down, move it over, and so just position that image however I want it to look inside. So I've got these starting to go back in now and make this website layout quickly. The final one I'm looking at is the bio for the surfer, and right now it's gray. I actually want it to have a white background, so I'm just simply going to click on the color fill and I'm going to change that to be white. And then I'm not going to take the time just now to necessarily put the text in here, unless you guys want me to. More than happy to do that. But what I will do is I'm going to grab another rectangle tool here and click and drag the rectangle tool around this button. And around that button there, just to show you the colors that I have, I'm going to choose a darker green. And this is where I always wonder why there's a rounded rectangle when I have the rectangle tool, because again, in the properties panel, I've got a link here and I can change that and say, let's make this rectangle have border radius. And instantly, if I zoom, you can start to see there's a border radius around here. So I can easily change that. If I don't like the 3 pixels, change that to 5. And you can see I can adjust it whenever I want. So it's not a one-time thing. Zoom in again 100%. And I've got the surfer bio rectangle here. I'm going to turn that on. And I'm simply going to go to the effects now and do 2 things with the effects. I'm going to click on the effects and I'm going to choose stroke. And I'm going to add, there you go, 6-point stroke around the outside of the object, just to push this away from the background image, so I've got a clear delineation of that. And I'm going to add a drop shadow to this. See if we can see it. Make it a little bit larger. There you go. Put it on a bit of an angle. Sure, 135. There. So I've just added a shadow using the effects from that layer. And when we've got that work done, hopefully we can start to see, okay, great. Taking a look at this artboard, here's all the layers. And I'm simply going to grab these layers again, just like I did for the hero image. I'm going to grab all these layers for this headshot. I'm going to group them together, Command G, and this is going to be Surfer 1. I'm going to move that down below the hero image. I'm going to keep it above the hero image, that's right, because I want to have this image poke above. Sorry for zooming around so quickly. I can start to see that this has taken place now. Great. Little bit of issue on the edge here that I'll fix up in a minute. But what I can do with this now that I've got this created and it's in a layer group, I can simply Command G the entire layer group that I have here. Or sorry, duplicate this layer group. Command J, which I don't know a reason for Command J other than duplicate. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'll drag it down below. and I can see that all the layers are inside Surfer 1 and this Surfer 1. So I'm going to change this to be Surfer 2. So I know exactly which layer that I'm working on. Surfer 2, Command T, Control T, and I can simply drag this layer group over, and there it is there. And because when I go into the Surfer 2, I've got everything set up the exact same way I had before, I can go in and change that headshot. So I can simply delete that layer that was the headshot, go back in, and I'm going to find Olivia, and I've got these two photos of Olivia, and I'll open both of those up inside Photoshop. And it's just as easy as replacing it. I no longer have to worry about the layout. So I'm going to copy, paste Olivia's photo over top of the headshot, Option or Alt, click that together, scale it down so the image fits nicely inside that circle. Scroll down, take that background image, delete that background image. Go grab the new background image, copy, close, paste, move that in, scale the image bit. How does it look inside the image mask? Create the image mask, and there you go. Does that start to make sense?
Yeah, this looks great. I'm just posting in here. If people have questions, they can put them in the chat, but love seeing this come to life.
Great. So that's hopefully, again, how you speed up the layouts. So I can do Control J, Command J again, and this can be Surfer 3. So again, just using the aspects of everything that we're doing to speed this up. Command T, grab that, move that over. So while some students may go, it takes a long time to set up the first one, it really does, but if you do a good job on the first one, then you don't have to worry as much because you've already got that template set up for everything else you're doing if there's a repeatable area. So I'll just do exactly what we've done with the other ones, and I'm going to go find Mason, some photo of Mason, grab the surfing photo for the background, and do the exact same action all over again. Grab the photo, copy, paste it in, move the photo over, move it above the headshot, group that together, scale it down, position it. There you go. Great, go down to the image mask, grab the image mask, the background image, copy that, close, paste. And I can see that image hidden behind here, so I'll just move it over here, clip that image, and again, click and drag. I can position this wherever I'd like. Maybe I want to make it a little bit larger so we can see him surfing the background there, and drag that over. And this starts to build up my layout. So I can use shapes, clipping masks, groups, all in Photoshop to make this start to really work properly. I can bring back my guides so I can see the guides and make sure that everything is going to be aligned properly and know that I'm going to do things as professionally as possible. How's that for an intro to Photoshop and using the shapes with that?
Looks great. If people have any questions or comments, feel free to post them in the chat. Jason says great stuff, so he's excited to try it.
Great.
Let's see if, yeah.
All right. So again, as I go down here, I just see, more of the shapes that we have. So I can put a geometric shape in here. So there's my rectangle, and it's the opposite of the hero image. So instead of just having like click, drag, I always drag it to the lower anchor point, wherever the lower point is, so it's not the top one, because then that allows me to see where the top anchor point is. Click, edit that, move that up, bam. Yes, I know. It makes it a lot easier for me, and I'll just do this one other one. Oh, and I've managed to put it inside a different layer group. So I'm just going to drag this down, drag it out of that layer group. Close that. So there's my rectangle at the bottom here, and this is like my about mask. And grab that image one more time. So there's my about background. Drag it into Photoshop. Copy, paste, clip, reposition. There we go. And if I choose to change the opacity on this, this starts to matter. So I'm just going to go really quick to this background here. And if I change the opacity, so if I make it 50%, you can really start to play with this. If I change it to something like 10%, you can actually see the gray background. So let me turn off this one here. So I can actually see the gray color of this shape in the background of this path. I can see that coming through when I change the opacity. So if you are changing the opacity, just be aware of that. You may want to change that shape color to white or to another color that you want to show through if you were to change opacity to that. And then I think you guys can all do squares and rectangles and position them and clipping masks, and I think you see where I'm going with the rest for Photoshop here. So what I want to do is I'm going to save this right now, and looking at the time, yikes, 20 minutes left. So I'm going to say this is what we can do in Photoshop. But one thing I was really surprised at is just XD and how far it's come along in the past year. I just really love XD. So I'm going to save this file right now from Photoshop. I'm going to close that and say, okay, thanks, Kevin. What if I have to do a website in XD? How do I make something work quickly that way? So if I go back into XD, I'll show you how I'm going to create the exact same website, but using XD. So in XD, I've got the ability to do custom shapes. So I'm going to put in the website width and height that I have here already set up for this tutorial. So custom size 1366 by 3600, just like we did in Photoshop. And I'm going to click return. It's going to create a whole new document in here for me. Great. And I can start to rename the artboards and what have you. So if I double click on custom one, I can start to call it Ozio Surf Shop. There we go. And I want to take this artboard, and again, I want to drag the image in. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go find my template, my grayscale image, and there it is. And with XD, instead of opening, I can just simply drag this in. I know I can do it in Photoshop as well. I just find it cleaner to copy and paste. But if you simply want to drag it into Photoshop, you're welcome to. So in XD, I'm going to drag it in. It displays in a smaller file size just because of the relationship of the pixels and the resolution. So I'm going to scale this back out, holding the Shift key to keep it congruent. And it now fits the size of my artboard, which is fantastic. I'm going to go and change the appearance again, just like I did in Photoshop. So in the appearance here on the right-hand side, I'm going to set it to 50%. So it's just a little bit lighter gray, so my shapes will show up better than that. I don't want this to move, so I need to lock this image. I can simply go to the Object menu, and I can choose Lock from the Object menu. And there it's locked. So now I can't move this object. Fantastic. I'm going to zoom in 100%. And again, just like before, take this image, and I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, click and drag. See what it's like. The height is 607. I'm going to set it to 610 and set it back to 90. Great. Looking down here, it already comes with a border by default. I don't want a border on it. I just need the shape color, so I'm going to turn off the border. I'm going to click on the fill, and I'm going to choose some sort of gray in there, maybe a darker gray so we see it. And there's my shape. I realized, though, in XD, I don't have any direct select tool. I only have the selection tool and these shapes here. So I want to grab the bottom right-hand corner. And because I don't have the tools here that I do in Photoshop, here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to double click on the shape inside. So double click inside the rectangle shape. And it removes it from the default options where I can, if I click outside, I can click on the targets and I can make the corners rounded. If I just double click on this object, it now shows me all the anchor points that I have for this rectangle. And I can go down to the bottom anchor point, click on that anchor point, and simply drag. I'm going to hold the Shift key to keep it as congruent as possible. And there's that shape that I've got. Let go, and I've got this perfectly modified geometric shape, just like we did in Photoshop. Really easy. And again, for in XD, I can simply drag images in. So I'm going to grab this hero image and again, drag it inside the shape. So the second that I drag it over an object, it automatically highlights the shape that's going to go into, drop it in, and it automatically scales the shape to fit within that box. If I want to change the placement or sizing of this image inside XD, kind of like Photoshop, I can double click on it. It shows me the image inside that shape, and I can scale that image up. I can reposition the image If I want to move them up a little bit more so I have a little more contrast, and I can create that shape really easy. Another fun thing I can do in inside XD is I can take this shape that's geometric right now, and if I zoom up just a little bit, what I want to do is I want to try and add a Bezier curve to this shape, so it's not just straight geometric. I can add it to a rectangle, I can add it to a modified rectangle, but what I can do here is if I double click on this object again, on the actual edge of the shape, I can actually go, and I've got those 4 corners now of this rectangle shape, and I can simply go along the edges and I can add, my pen tool automatically pops up for some reason, even though I don't have the pen tool selected, but because I go along the path of the shape, I can simply click and it adds an anchor point. I can then change that, I can click that shape. Notice that it's trying to follow and fill the shape that I've got as well. And I've got kind of this wonky, again, everything is square. I want to have more organic, it's waves, there's curves. I'm going to double click on this anchor point that I've got created, and it changes it from straight points to a Bezier curve. And again, I've got the handle, so if I want to change this or add even more distortion to it, I can easily go in and add the distortion however I want my shape to look. And again, I can click on any one of these objects, click and drag them around and give a really kind of funky organic shape. So I can move from a geometric shape to a modified geometric shape to a more organic shape easily enough inside XD. And again, XD, some of the fun things I have is I've got the layers panel in the bottom corner. I click on the layers, double click on the Ozio Surf Shop, and I've got this hero image. And again, I can hide the image. But I want to take these two and I want to group them together. So inside that group, drag the image in there as well. Let's drag that so it looks a little bit better. Rename this group to be hero, just like I did in Photoshop. Close that. And I want to simply hide this, so I'm going to click on the eye icon there. Oh, sorry, let me go in there, and I have grabbed this out by accident. Drop that down there. Great. So if I hide that background, that's the background template. I want to hide the hero. Here we go there. And I'm going to zoom in again. And I'll take my rectangle tool. And this is exactly like we did before inside Photoshop, except for now we're just using XD. So I've created one rectangle, and I can hide that. I'm going to create a second rectangle. And again, just like in Photoshop, this is the background image here for the surfer. And I'll hide that. And I'm going to take the ellipse tool, and I'm going to create a circle here for the surfer photo, the headshot. So I can, again, change these to be headshot, mask, so I know what they are. Surfer, BK, mask, and maybe surfer card is a better term for this, so I use a surfer card. And I've got all those images there, fantastic. On my desktop, I'm going to go grab Steven's photo, so grab his face and drop it right in there. Double click with the selection, or with my selection tool, and I can scale it, increase the size of it, because I didn't want it scaled exactly to fit inside that circle. I want it to be cut off a little bit. There you go. Position it how I'd like. I'm going to go and click on the surfer background image, so there's that rectangle, exact same thing as before. Drag that in. Fantastic. And the surfer card, just turn that on so I can see the surfer card there. And if I want to add a shadow, I can click on the right-hand side in the Properties panel, and I can start to adjust this shadow as well. The X, the Y, and the blur for it. So maybe I want to do 6 by 6. And I've added a little drop shadow there. So I can select all these images here. I can group them again, and I can call it, just like we did in the Photoshop, Surfer 1. And I love this part inside XD. Oh, maybe I should do one more thing. Grab a rectangle here. I'm just going to grab the size over here from Olivia and just bring in the corners a bit, give a little bit of corner radius. And if I don't like it there, what I've done just visually, I can go again to the Properties panel and say, great, I'm going to add in an actual number there, change the fill, turn off the border. So again, I'm doing very similar things to Photoshop. Drag this over to this card here, and I can put it inside here. Label that layer, and I've got the surfer done. And then with XD, I can select the entire surfer, and the repeat grid, which you guys hopefully have seen, is just this phenomenal little ability that they have given us, that we can actually go and we can select everything inside here, and I can say repeat grid, and then I can click and I can just drag it across. A little bit of spacing issues, so I can just move the images across this way. And I can ungroup that, click on the images here, delete this one, I've added the next one, and I can come inside here and I can double click and choose this image here, and this is Olivia, so I'm going to grab Olivia and drop Olivia's photo in here, scale that up, move that over, double click on the ellipse, go back and grab Mason's photo, drop that in there, scale up Mason so his photo fits in here more, the headshot. And the exact same thing for the background. So there's Mason's background image, I can drop in there, scale it up, reposition it however I'd like. The same thing for Olivia. Drop it in there.
Wow, this looks great. It's amazing how quickly you work. We have some comments from the chat too, Kevin. So
Yeah,
first
absolutely.
of all, Maurizio was really impressed by how you were working in Photoshop. It's not easy to do that, obviously. And moving from then Photoshop to XD, if you have a specific opinion about XD as you're moving into that. And so Maurizio says, I'm thinking of inserting XD in my lessons, and if you have a comparison with Photoshop. Teresa commented on the thread, XD is great for beginning design classes. The UI is clean and not as overwhelming like Photoshop. But curious if you have a perspective on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Really great questions. Thank you for those. I was really curious too. So in Toronto, I went to the industry to go and ask them what they're doing. Because again, I want to be responsible as I'm teaching. I want the students to be able to go out there and get a job. I want to make sure I'm teaching the workflow, which is a key issue to me. So this past spring, I went in the May time period, April time period, and visited two of our advisory committee members at their companies and talked with their production guys. And I asked them, because my assumption was, my bias was, XD is so easy to use. Why would I use Photoshop anymore? This doesn't make any sense to me. And when I talked with one company, they said, yeah, we use XD all the time. And as I talked with them further, they said, oh, we have an in-house coder. So they're easy. They like XD. They can take whatever we do in XD and they can repurpose it. But, oh, that's cool. Okay, so I'm just going to teach XD from now on. I went to the second company about 2 weeks later and talked with them, and they said, oh, we can't do that because our developers are asking us for Photoshop, layered Photoshop documents that they can convert into HTML and CSS for their projects. So I thought, oh, so the issue that we have is it depends on the developer. The designer can do it in whichever application they want. They have the freedom to do whatever they like. However, if they have a developer that says, no, you have to do it this way or do it that way, then we're kind of stuck by that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And Teresa just commented that there's a difference between teaching design concepts versus teaching how to design something for specific output intent. XD is great for concept. XD is a concept app, not as much of a production tool. Don't know if you have thoughts on that.
I guess my hesitation says I kind of disagree. It depends where you're going again, because again, if I share this object out, so if I go to the share menu in XD and I save this menu and I share it for development, I can actually go into the web browser and I can export the assets from there, as well as if I click on any of the assets here, I can click mark for export. And when I do that, it allows the shared preview to download those files. At this point in time, I'll agree that XD only allows you to export it as a PNG file, which is great for transparencies, but sometimes PNG files can be a little heavy. and JPEGs might be a little bit smaller. It also allows you to save it as a PDF file, which I find kind of interesting. So it again depends on where you're going with XD. So I would say, yes, it's not a production app, but out of Photoshop, I think you're exporting the layers and exporting the individual assets. And I think you can do that in XD as well. The only problem is you don't have as many file formats as Photoshop. So Photoshop wins for file formats. Does that help?
I think if anyone's commenting on the chat.
Okay, while they're doing that, I'm going,
that makes sense to me, though. Yeah.
Okay. Does that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always find that if the designer is not a developer, then they have the issue of, well, how do I design in this? And there are some limitations. One of my friends who I introduced to XD over the summer, he created a website for a client and shared it, and the client loved it, but they had a question in the web browser preview from XD, and they didn't realize that they were to scroll up and down because there are no scroll bars in the share view for XD. So we just said, okay, why don't we add a scroll bar, like a static scroll bar, and set it there. Okay, I'm going to show you one really quick thing here. If I go back, okay, I'll try and show you a few quick things. So I'm going to create a new document. Or maybe I'll just open it. So I'm in XD, and you guys know you can do this if I choose open. So on my desktop, on my computer, here's the PSD file that we created earlier in this session, and I'm in XD. It is a PSD file. I'm just going to select open and give it a second, and it's opened up my PSD file. In fact, if I go to my layers, I can see that the layers are the exact same from Photoshop. I can actually go inside these elements. I can zoom up, and if I want to switch out a photo, I can switch out a photo. So that's kind of really cool. So anything I've done in Photoshop, so if I have clients or people who've done a lot of work in Photoshop, they don't want to give up the work they've done in Photoshop, they don't want to recreate things, they can simply open up the PSD file, the layered PSD file inside XD and continue working. Yes, there are some glitches with the type, but compared to starting from scratch, I think this is a good idea. Here's one thing that I think Photoshop does in terms of layouts better if I want to create more of the organic type. So I'm back inside Photoshop. I'm zooming up. I'm going to the hero image, and I've got this basic shape here, the hero mask. And I don't really like that hero mask. It's too geometric for me. I want to have something that's a little bit more organic. So one of the things in the template files I had this torn paper. So I've got a PNG file of torn paper, and here's what it looks like. So instead of using a geometric shape, I'm going to select this organic shape, copy, I'm going to paste it in here. I'm going to move the image up top. I'm going to zoom down, and let's double check where this is. Oh yeah, it's covering the navigation. That's not going to do. So I'll drag it down just a little bit, show my image above there, and again, clip that photo to that shape, and Shazam. I've got something that looks totally organic. It's not something I can create with the shape tools. If I want to do the exact same thing in XD, I have a little bit of trouble because if I go to XD, I've got this shape here. I'm just going to delete that shape in the image. I'm going to take the PNG file because I can simply drag this raster image inside XD, drop it in, put it inside there. Great. Now I'm going to add that hero image, just drag it inside here. Problem is, if you can see already, you should see that there's an issue with this image. It's highlighting the blue from the top to the bottom, not just the dark shape. When it's highlighting the white as blue and I drop it, it brought in that image in a rectangle frame. When I dropped the surfer on top of that ripped paper, it automatically filled just the frame with that. So a workaround I found for that is saving out this image as a JPEG, opening it inside Illustrator, bear with me, clicking on this image, I can image trace, set it to a black and white logo, expand. I want to get rid of these shapes up the top, the white at the top, white at the bottom, and a little bit of ragged edge down there. So I now have a vector shape again. From Illustrator to XD, I have to copy that shape and paste it in. and there's that shape. So now this is a vector shape as opposed to a raster shape. Now I can take my hero image. Now I can drag it into the shape, and you'll notice the top to the bottom, only the black part of the vector image is a little bit blue. The top part is not blue. Drop it in there, and that's how I can do it in XD. Does that help?
And Suzanne has, a quick question. So she says, so in XD, you can work on I think she means the photo like in Photoshop. So I know you've been sharing kind of different techniques throughout. Suzanne, I don't know if you want to clarify that a little bit. I don't know if that makes sense.
Sure. I would say, for instance, if I've got this image here, I'm in XD right now. I've got the surfer image. And on the left-hand side, I've got something. I don't know what this is. So I can't really edit this inside XD, right? So what I have to do, if it's in photo editing, I'm going to go back to Photoshop to edit it that way.
Right. That makes sense.
Okay.
Cool.
Because XD is just not a photo editing tool.
Of course, yeah.
I'm thankful that it's not a photo editing tool because I think it would have just way too many.
Yeah. Oh, she says she means if you can work on the layers. So I would assume you would just take that photo back into,
Oh, absolutely. I can click on the layers panel here. I've got this group 5. Again, I tend to like to hide the layer and go, what are you? Okay, that's the one I want. I can take that group and drop it down. View that. Is that that work?
And then Teresa says, I think Suzanne means if you open a Photoshop file in XD, can you save the XD edit and open it back up in Photoshop?
Oh, great question. No, I can't do that. That's a really good question, though. I like that thought. Can you flip back and forth between the two? I don't believe so, but let me try it really quick. So I've got this file. I'm going to save this XD file, save it on my computer. Sure, I'm going to save it as OZO really quick. Save it in my documents. All right. Let me go inside my documents, users, Brandon, documents. There's my XD file. Drag it to my desktop. Can I open up that XD file inside Photoshop? I can only do it inside XD. If I force it and say open it up inside Photoshop, now I could not complete your request because Photoshop does not recognize this type of file. So great question. I can't do it. Maybe in November, right, Clara?
We'll see what the announcements are.
That's right. Claire, you're not going to give us any hints? Oh.
I know, but there will be live updates.
It's like you like your job or something.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. This has been incredible and just really amazing how quickly you work back and forth between applications. So really excited to try this out and share this recording with everyone. And I know we're at time, but for those who are watching the recording, how can folks get in touch with you? I know you had your slide up at the beginning with your email. I don't know if you want to flip back to that really quickly. And if there are any other sites or anything else that you want to share.
Yeah, those are my links right now. I think in thought, I keep going, I'm going to upload videos to YouTube one day. So when I get that spare moment, I'll create some videos and throw that up there. I'm really looking forward to seeing what XD happens, all the updates in November. Totally excited about that. And seeing what new opportunities they have, because I agree, Adobe's doing such a great job. I'm not just saying it because we're Adobe, but just to say that that I really feel the tools that they're creating now have such compatibility with each other. I like that there's even a little bit more of a focus going on between the apps, but I can move back and forth in general between the different applications from Illustrator to Photoshop, using those tools to XD and create what I want. It just gives me so much more creative freedom. So my email address is open to you guys if you ever want to send me an email. There's Island Contact. There's my Twitter account. There's my Adobe edX account there. And you're more than welcome to contact me and ask me any questions you have. Ask me all the creative questions you have, and if I have answers, I promise I'll respond with an I don't know, but I'll look into that for you.
Perfect.
Because I have a lot of questions myself.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much again, Kevin, and hopefully this will spark more conversations within the community. And for those who are watching the recording, be sure to join us next Wednesday at 12 o'clock Pacific time for our next creativity workshop. All right, I'll stop the recording there. Thank you.
Thank you.